plaintiffs said that they need more time to prepare a measured and time-consuming response, including hiring an expert to evaluate whether the city's fee request is appropriate. They also said they want to address the, quote, chilling effect such requests for attorney's fees have on the rights of residents to challenge the government. The judge gave them until August 19th to file their response. And with that, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. This is House Einstein podcast 85. I'm your host, Osman, with the House Einstein brokerage, and with me is Hamish Crabb. And we are here to educate, entertain, and hopefully take you along on a journey that usually relates somewhat to real estate. Our mission from a legal perspective, of course, is to entertain. Do not make any real estate or financial or other important decisions based on what you hear in this podcast. If you're a client of our brokerage, reach out to us directly, talk to your agent firsthand, and we are more than happy to advise you. And with that, Hamish, should we talk about what we're going to talk about?
Welcome to Electric Avenue. We did not get the copyrights to the song, so it is the typical intro for this one.
It's hard not to think of
it's in
the
my
song.
head now. Yeah.
It's totally in my head too. Well, it's actually on my workout playlist right now, so it's really in my head.
Fun. Yeah.
It's got such a great riff. Like, you just cannot get that. Is that Eddie Grant?
Oh, yeah, I couldn't tell you.
I think it's Eddie Grant. Anyway, an amazing song. But today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the rapid acceleration of electrification in the housing market, including topics like the potential cost of electricity rising into the future, the new electrical service options, smart panels, mini splits, also called heat pumps, and solar options, the expiration of solar credits, meaning government incentives, as well as all sorts of other fun topics that
I went a little ham in the show notes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Notes has got a lot, Hamish. I don't know if we're going to... I'm looking at how long the show notes are on this one, and I don't know if we're going to have that. Like, I don't know we're going to go that deep.
Introduce it just to get a lot of the fluff out of the way, I think, and then we should be able to have a good convo on it. That's my bad.
Let me open that with saying the reason you may want to listen to this podcast is perhaps you're thinking about buying solar for your home or installing heat pumps to heat or cool your home. And we're seeing some pretty big changes in the market. And likely there will be a huge response to the elimination of certain tax incentives. So if you haven't already scheduled your install for any of these things, you may want to think about getting on it, because there's a wave of people that are looking to meet the deadlines to get the rebates or tax credits. And we happen to have some experience with that firsthand, Hamish and I, so we have some things to share about that. After we talk about that topic, which is our closing table topic, including, by the way, its market appeal for having homes that are well electrified, we're going to touch on shameless self-promotion, our usual segment where we talk about a buyer or two or a seller or two of ours, our clients, and what they might be looking to buy or sell. We're going to talk about sales of the week. These are lessons from recent closings. And then we hit on our news articles, including the one that I alluded to in our opening quote, which is from an article in the Boulder reporting lab, written by, quote, staff. So not sure who wrote the article, but it's all about the ongoing litigation over CU South's flood mitigation project, the $66 million project that will lead the way to CU South development. And we've touched on that before, but we'll touch on it again. We're also going to talk about speed cameras on the diagonal. We're going to hit on city council and rules to limit the disruptions from public comment or public interactions. And I don't know, we might even talk a little bit about that meme of the week. For funsies, we might give you a little personal take on the astronomer CEO and
Yeah.
head of HR hookup at the Coldplay concert.
Probably just riff about it. Yeah.
Was sort of our office cooler conversation this week.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple Carveouts. So Carveout is our last segment. That's when we talk about things that are top of mind. And Hamish, I'm probably not going to do the one that's listed here because it's a repeat from the closing table.
Redundant.
So I might riff on something completely different when we get there. And that is our table of contents for podcast 85.
Fantastic. And I'll allow it. Totally fine. The board approves. We can change the carve-out topic.
Of what's actually in here on the fly? Yeah, we don't want to just have the carve-out be about our closing table topic. That doesn't make any sense. Okay.
So I think we'll get into it with personal experience anyhow. So
we're not going to really talk about market conditions this week because we covered it extensively last week, and it's something that is really relevant at the granular level when you're ready to buy or sell a house. And the right answer for that is to be consulting with your professional real estate advisor to do a drill down relative to what you're trying to do. And I'll give you an example. We were looking at a house this week and possibly writing an offer on a house in Boulder this week. And our client said, hey, can you, quote, run the comps? And I replied, this is via text, that absolutely, let's schedule a video call. Because what you think is a comp, I may not think is a comp. And there may not be enough of these comparable sales. Like they're really so unique when you get down to the granular level that you have to understand them in detail, their condition, their location, their design, and whether or not they're really relevant for the purchase or sale of what you're trying to do. They could also be a one-off. We have seen repeatedly people overpay or sometimes get a screaming deal, and that's not necessarily reflective of true market conditions. That can be a one-off, and understanding that, like if you have 5 so-called comparables that say the price should be $1 million, and you have one that sold for 800, the 800, there's something about this particular deal that resulted in it selling for so much less. And it may not be something we can suss out by reviewing the MLS, but we'll try. And in some cases, we'll reach out to even a listing agent if we really need to understand what happened in this deal, or the buyer's agent who might have insight into the deal for us. And being local in our market and hopefully have a decent reputation and good relationships with our colleagues mean that when I pick up the phone and call them, they usually tell me what actually happened in the deal, especially since it's a closed deal. They really don't have anything to lose. And sometimes somebody stole the house, right? That does happen, where the seller capitulated and accepted a crazy low offer. Or in some cases, as we talked about last week, maybe it was a huge inspection credit, or it could be an intentional or accidental underpricing that drove a bidding war, and somebody had to have it and paid way more than they should have. And so that type of thing does happen in the real estate market, and understanding that it helps to review those comps in a video meeting, not just send you an email with a list of comps and here's what it should price for. Particularly the more high end or the more unique the market. Like if we're talking about suburbia, and even in suburbia, right, with cookie cutter houses, there can still be large discrepancies in what a home transacted for based on very localized factors. So it's not something that is very easily done with just running the comps. We find it's better to just do a video meeting and let's do it in real time and go through the comparable sales.
And it's transparent too, right? Like imagine your agent's like, I ran the comps and you're going to want to offer $250 over. And you're like, okay, guy that's getting the commission, sure, like I'll believe you. So it's a little bit better. You can riff on it and talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I hearken it to being in an investment committee meeting when I used to work in the investment world directly. And there are a handful of really intelligent people asking very intelligent questions about the deal structure, about the returns, and all sorts of other factors in determining the next move in potentially the negotiation, and directing the agent, which is usually the deal maker, sometimes an investment banker, sometimes an associate, to take the next step. But getting it past investment committee is really important, and it isn't done with an email saying, yeah, you should offer $250 over list because reasons. That makes no sense.
My secret analysis, my algorithm. I mean, shoot,
Right.
we'll get into that on a sale of the week.
Right.
Or-
I have bills to pay,
yeah.
so you should offer this price because I really need
Yeah.
you to, blow out the competition to buy the house, even though it's not worth that price. I mean, that's the craziness. People put a lot of trust in their agents, and in some cases that trust is deserved. In some cases that trust is not deserved. And the truth teller, honestly, is video meetings. Like, if you can't do this in real time on a video call, you should not be an agent. Like, you should not be. And you've seen this how many, like hundreds of times, Hamish, where we can do video.
I still don't. I mean, you know your comp so much better than I do. I could probably run a comp meeting now after seeing you do it so many times, but I'm like, there's a huge duty and responsibility, and I think the fact that we take it seriously, maybe it's an excuse, but I'm still very nervous to take that on myself.
I hear you, and that's only honestly because you haven't done it. Other agents on the team have also done it many, many times, and it's sort of like you've seen somebody drive a car, you understand the physics of driving the car, you've watched it on TV, but you've never driven the car yourself, and it's okay to be nervous. And I get why you might feel that way because you've never been the one driving the vehicle. You've been on the ride. So
and I've totally pulled comps myself and then brought them to you, and we've gone through them that way. But in front of a client like that, oh man,
Sure, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. But that's what you should be looking for your agent to do. That's what you hired them to do. That's what I would think you've hired them to do. You certainly haven't hired them to just drive you around in a car and open a door. All right, let's move on. So market conditions, talk to your agent. We're not going to get into it this week.
This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more.
We are going to talk about our core topic, and that is this increasing wave of electrification and where the demand and pricing of electricity is likely to change, particularly as AI drives electric consumption going forward. Plus, of course, vehicles more and more are electric, and with heat pumps, mini splits, you have increasing demand on the grid, and the potential increase in costs in the future are substantive, are something to not take lightly. And so understanding how that plays into the real estate market is, I think, a very important thing for both buyers and sellers. If you're a buyer and you're evaluating homes for sale and you're thinking about which ones to put an offer in, you can retrofit older homes to bring them up to a much higher energy efficiency standard. But if they're newer to begin with, they often start off with so many improvements to efficiency and also, of course, design. But the latest shift is away from HVAC, the latest shift is away from forced air, which is really interesting to see, because for a long time, there was, at least my perception was, that buyers would walk into a home that didn't have forced air and say, it's just not going to work for me, right?
Yeah.
They would look at things like radiant floor or radiant wall heaters with a certain disdain, and you would see occasionally like holes cut in the wall and the old school air conditioner installed with the plug running in. And that was
like
really
a whole
just
picture frame, like window frame around it. Yeah.
A window frame around sort of a standard AC and janky installation with like foam, on the sides, like frankly a hotel room from like the 1990s or something. And it has shifted because of heat pumps and mini splits being so much more efficient, not just from the get-go, but also in their ability to control room level temperature. They're super quiet, and I'm seeing it now in $4+ million homes where the heating system is floor radiant and the cooling system are mini splits, although you also have the ability to have room level warm or cool from the heat pump or mini split system. And so what was perceived as maybe not so attractive is now commonplace in higher end homes. I'll also add, and this is for our buyers who have a noise sensitivity, I've been really shocked at how quiet mini
They're
splits
so
on.
quiet, right? Yeah, they're insane.
They are
Unless
not
you
the
crank it. Yeah.
unless you crank it. And
Yeah.
they are not the AC systems of yesterday. So there are currently some, I'm not going to go into the specific rebates and incentives here because they change, and I'm also not an expert in them, but there are, oh, your eyes are dancing, Hamish.
Dude, I've done some research on this topic.
Okay, jump in. Let's hear what you got to say.
So I think you're hitting the nail on the head, right? Like this technology, the heat pump technology, I even like the principle that makes it more efficient than like a furnace for heating, say, is called the latent heat of vaporization, and then for cooling, condensation. Anyhow, heat pumps traditionally in the like full majority, there's a head system that will go somewhere within your room and you get the room control. 605 Alpine had a forced air heat pump, and so
This is one of our listings.
yeah, or one of our older listings had a forced
sold. Yep.
had a forced air heat pump, and then they also put an additional head in the primary bedroom, so they could get primary bedroom and office, so they could get extra out of it. But one of the larger reasons that heat pumps weren't making headway in Colorado for so long is that they weren't efficient down to certain temperatures. My unit that I got installed probably about a month ago is only really operational to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point you want to have a backup. I've still got my furnace, so I plan to use that for the most part. But on the electrification topic, there's, you could get a resistive room heater or resistive strips in the ducting itself, which is also what 605 Alpine had done. The kind of argument for electrification too is that it removes combustibles from your home, right? If you have these natural gas coming into your home and you're burning it, there's a lot of infrastructure for it. There's a good argument to keep it. However, burning something's a little primitive at this point, and it's also a little bit more efficient to take the energy generated in a power plant specifically designed to capture the most heat energy from whatever you're burning, right? So if you're burning natural gas for electricity, you're going to get a lot more efficiency from that electricity. Heat pumps can be over 100% efficient. Because of that latent heat of vaporization and condensation, they're not creating heat, they're simply moving it. So you've got a condenser and an evaporator unit inside and outside, and it moves via compressor fluid back and forth, and that fluid evaporates or condenses on the inside and then takes that heat from condensing and evaporating and shifts it indoor outdoor. So it's really neat. I geeked out on it for a hot minute, and so I could go on and on. But there's, so many technologies and stuff to it. I don't want to just derail the topic, Oz.
You're not derailing it. No,
what do you got?
This is right on topic. And I'm going to add that indoor air quality is really important, and burning fuel to cook, for example, is releasing some of those byproducts into your home.
Yeah.
And the idea that it disappears is ignorance. And I admit to being ignorant. When we bought this house in the mountains, my father-in-law, who's an engineer, brought in to play all of this concern over the propane cook stove.
Really?
And he mentioned that not only do you get the normal byproducts from propane, but because of how propane is manufactured and transported and how it has a tendency to absorb whatever container leftover chemicals were in the container, you're getting a lot more than just clean propane when you're burning propane, and it's horrible for indoor air quality. He said even for a barbecue grill, he's not crazy about it, but it's really bad for cooking with propane inside a house. And I was really surprised, and he's an engineer and made his career that way. And I looked into it at the time, and it turned out to be there was all sorts of health concerns, which increased our acceleration away from burning gas inside the house to switching to an induction cooktop and induction stove, an oven, right? The cooktop and oven combo, which we did within the first 12 months of buying this house. It was one of our big projects was to get that in, which during COVID was easier said than done. So you're right to mention burning things, not like the health effects as well as the inefficiency of converting from one to another to heat to electricity it definitely is more efficient to be electric.
Right.
When I was growing up, the house we were in was constructed, I believe, in the 70s, and every room had radiant electric heat with a thermostat. And at the time, New York State and Electric and Gas, NYSEG, was really expensive. And I remember being in a lot of trouble with my parents for leaving that heater on during the day. When we were at school, we were told to turn it off. Even in the middle of winter, the house retained enough heat, nothing was going to freeze in the hours we were at school. And it was like the bill was so large that it would upset my dad if he saw lights on or any electricity being used. And so electric radiant baseboard I still know is very inefficient because you're literally creating resistance in a coil to create heat, right?
Yeah.
Like that. It's when I see that, I always warn my clients that's going to be an expensive electric bill. But at least you're not releasing. Yeah, go ahead.
The funny thing on that too is like it is still resistive heating is like 100% efficient because all of the energy you're putting into it is coming out as heat energy. So it's like, I guess, I'm trying to think of like maybe people thinking to themselves, isn't electric just getting more and more expensive? Well, we're going to talk about solar and things too. But I think, since 2022 and the whole Ukraine-Russia, we've seen the volatility of natural gas prices as well. And then with things like the tariffs and current things going on stateside, I'm not 100% sure we're going to see consistent prices out of natural gas either. And when we talk about solar and kind of local production of energy, it starts to kind of look a little bit less compelling altogether as well.
Well, there have been huge mistakes from a political perspective. Like, I think it was Montana that went from buying having long-term contracts to buying on the spot market for electricity and gas, and their cost of utilities just exploding because of that. And so I think that when you have more generation in your own home, you insulate yourself somewhat from the volatility of electric prices. I asked AI to model payback periods and the investment thesis for putting solar panels, significantly more solar panel generation on the home I own than what we consume, with the additional cost of, with the additional consumption from the heat pumps that are now installed in the house, from the electric car,
hot tub,
the hot tub, and our bills have been relatively tame. I mean, about what you would expect from a Martin Acres house is what our bills have been, which is kind of a small ranch. And now we're in a home that's, about 3 times the size of that, and it's still about the same electric bill. But getting less propane in terms of like the cost of that 1,000-gallon propane tank that we fill about once a year, and getting generation on the house. We very much considered battery backup as well, although we already have propane backup. But we learned things that the payback period for what you're betting on with battery storage is that net metering will eventually make battery storage during low-cost energy periods, when you store it when it's cheap, you feed it back to the grid when it's expensive, will somehow benefit you. But that's a gamble on the future that's clearly not there yet. But the gamble on, or the investment decision for solar, given our consumption, was really a question of, is payback happening at year 7, 10, or 12, based on what we think is going to happen with electric prices. And factoring in one more piece, which is really interesting. I'm talking about nominal electric prices, which are impacted by inflation. And the model that the contractor sent me factored in 5.5% increases in the cost of electricity. And AI was saying closer to 2 to 3%, which was super interesting to see it have a much more conservative long-term view on inflation than I have. I think that's, given how the government's spending money, that's an insane idea that we're going to be able to keep inflation down to 2 to 3%. I don't think so.
I'm wondering if like the contractors, like, you know, if we make it look like it's going to get real expensive, they're more likely to buy in. But
of course, I'm sure,
yeah.
right? And they disclose what their numbers. So if you're getting, here's the takeaway: if you're getting one of these proposals from a solar contractor, take it with a grain of salt that they've got a number in there that they're discounting the inflation cost, the future cost of electricity by, and it might be too high. And so just like with any investment thesis, you have to put a number on it. At the end of the day, you have to decide what is, like if you're going to go buy a house, Hamish, as an investment property, and you have an alternative investment, you have to decide, you've got the risk-free investment of buying government treasuries and bonds, and then you have a risk premium for doing what you're doing, which could also have a downside risk. What is that? What is the discount rate is what the question is. And you could literally spend days in meetings debating the discount rate. And the impact of that discount rate is massive. But at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that the best case scenario is a 7-year payback on our investment. The most likely scenario is a 10-year payback on our investment. It's challenging to model because you also are reducing propane usage. Like we could set the house to heat 60 degrees the whole house, or even 55 degrees, and then spot heat the rooms we're actually in, right? Let the rest of the house stay at, and we had that level of control, but it was burning propane before. And now we can keep it even lower and burn electrons. So there's resiliency, there's payback periods to think about. There are these expiring tax credits and rebates.
Yeah, the federal rebates and incentives.
Huge impact.
So those, for what it's worth, I looked into them a bit before we discussed. There's 3 rebates, incentives column that are going to expire roughly 2025. So December 31st, 2025. The only one that goes to midway through 2026, from what I could pick up in the Big Beautiful Bill, was the new energy efficient home credit, which is more based on construction, insulation, and tightening your home. Tightening is airflow, leakage, drafting, stuff like that. So one thing that I think there's, and you know, I think you're speaking, Osmond, to the like investor listeners and kind of the I call them investor listeners. My side, what I'm thinking of is from like a DIY standpoint, right? Because I DIY'd the mini split, and I spoke briefly to a salesperson for solar and got their quote, and kind of back of my head was like, well, yeah, I'm going to have this payoff period because you're taking a 10K cut, right? Like I went and found all the things that they were offering me, and they were wanting 10K for labor and to pay the salesperson and all these things. And I was like, well, I could get a better payback period quicker. One thing that kind of irks me about this is I really like what Boulder's doing. I really like what Colorado's doing. They are making it pretty difficult to DIY your own solar. And there's some good websites out there that will help you with the permitting application. They'll come up with drawings for you to submit to the planning department. They'll give you all the solar panels, the inverters, everything you need to make it work. But there's still no room for doing this in a modular fashion. And I think that really makes it super affordable for anyone to do it, right? Because I can swing a panel or two a month and instantly offset. Like this computer draws, okay, it's in the wrong setting right now, but it draws roughly 250 to 300 watts continuous while it's on the whole workstation that I'm at right now. 2 panels. And then I'd offset this, and that would save me a couple bucks a month. You know, we have micro inverters, we've got the technology, we have the means, but there's still kind of these bottlenecks in our permitting system, you know.
I mean, you bring up a very interesting point, and that's the modularity of why are we not design this so that a homeowner could modularly add panels as demand increases, and panel technology keeps getting better and better and better, and panel prices have plummeted through the floor, right? Panels are actually quite cheap. And so really what you're paying for is the professional install. You're paying for the system to be complete one time. And many people, and I would argue most people, don't have the skills or the time to DIY something like this. And Definitely. I would kind of argue, Hamish, that you don't either have the DIY time, because it takes a lot of time. As you found with your installing your mini split system, it wasn't as fast as you thought. It took like several weeks to get it dialed in.
Granted, I had a rib out of place, and my electrician had a wrist in a cast, so that took a decent amount of time on that. But do you watch Jerry Rig Everything? Have you seen his videos?
I do
okay.
not.
He's got a good video on DIY solar. He's the guy that, he'll get like the latest and greatest phone or something and then just basically durability test it until it's no longer a phone. You haven't seen him? No. He's like up there with Marquise or anything. No, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about The Millionaire Next Door, the book, The Millionaire Next Door, Danko, who was one of my professors in my MBA program. And their perspective or their analysis showed that most self-made wealthy individuals were not DIY people. And I always, after reading that, I took that to heart. And I came to the conclusion that if it's really educational and interesting and like scratches an itch for me from an intellectual perspective, I will DIY. If it's faster and easier for me to DIY than take it to somebody else, I'll DIY. Like I had an agent who's a friend of mine message me last week when he saw my oil change video, my Instagram oil change scrubbing the concrete. He's like, I haven't changed my own oil in 30 years. And he's a really successful agent. And then he wanted to know where I drop off the oil. I'm like, because I think he was trying to see if I was, dumping it in my yard or something. And I told him, no, I take it. I take it to recycling. But let me finish the story here, and then I'll let you jump back in. Like there's a principle I think that's important for DIY. And if you can't afford to hire somebody, then of course you DIY, right? You just simply can't afford it. That's the first principle. The second principle, though, is if it's usually more intelligent to invest spare time outside of your job in terms of improving your efficiency, performance in your career path. That's usually a better investment than spending money on somebody else than doing it yourself. Because of the time and effort. Like once I learned to sweat pipe, the curiosity was satisfied. I still have the blowtorch. I still have the tools. I can sweat pipe in a crawl space. But even at the exaggerated prices that plumbers typically charge right now, it makes more economic sense where I am professionally to hire somebody that's going to come back if it's wrong and sweat the pipe right and fix the fittings correctly than me doing it. Shark bite may be the exception. You don't necessarily need to sweat pipe anymore.
I'm a big fan of,
or other types of quick fit. They seem to meet code and do just fine. But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that DIY is really, I enjoy DIYing a lot of things, but man, like the time it would take to DIY solar on the roof, plus being physically on the roof, like the risk of falls and getting seriously injured up there is massive, and it's a permanent lifetime disability. So it's usually, I know you're thinking about doing DIY solar. I'm going to actively discourage you.
I appreciate that.
More stuff to do. We'll find more projects than give you the free time to do your own solar.
I'd say like cumulative too, right? The heat pump probably took 2.5 days. And there was some planning things that probably could have improved it, right? And of course, DIY is not for everyone. If you find a passion or have a spark for it and it engages your curiosity like it does for me, go for it. And I think, making mention of the caveats, and also, it's this kind of like nobody wants to learn anything anymore, or nobody wants to know anything anymore. But then when you have these kind of roadblocks in place, how are you incentivizing people to learn or figure something out, right? Like if it's made impossible for you to go and DIY solar, are you going to turn around and be like, well, yeah, everybody's lazy and they have to go to a contractor, So I don't know.
It's a great point. And sometimes the legislation is written to benefit the installers, like the electric bike rebates. If you buy the electric bike online, you don't get the rebate that the city has. But if you go to a local bike shop and buy an electric bike, you get a huge rebate, or you at least are eligible in some cases for a huge rebate based on a variety of factors.
I didn't even know there were rebates. That's cool.
That's the city of Boulder has had it for the last couple of years, and some of my friends have bought bikes, really nice bikes, for well under $1,000 because of those rebates. So
that's insane.
It's a good deal if you're able to afford it, and you don't want to DIY your own bike like I've built one, and I've also gotten the direct to consumer, shipped bike and assembled the few components at home. Because I don't see a massive difference in the quality between the bike shop bike and the ship it to me and I'll put it together bike.
The kit bike.
Although in some cases, right, like it depends on, what type of bike. The mountain bike I bought, the Yamahas were just such a screaming deal when they went out of business 2 years ago or last year that I couldn't say no. But prior to that, it was the cheap drop ship or do it yourself. So I feel the do it yourself bug too. Yeah. But I think it's important to ask yourself, is this really something you want to DIY? And the incentives are not there in most cases economically. Yeah. The economic incentives.
And another example, right? Like Excel won't give you the heat pump rebate unless you have a licensed professional install the heat pump. So that's like a direct example, right? Where you're not going to get the incentives if you choose to DIY.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, there is some complexity to it. The guy, the team that installed the heat pumps here at our house, who I will recommend, they were here a full week. Yeah. And this company is owned by a young man who has launched his career path in doing this type of work and came highly recommended from one of our clients and is very well educated. And it still took him, with his attention to detail, it still took him a full week. And then to get through the teething issues on the installation, he was here an extra 2 days. So he was here a total of 7 days. Yeah. He had helpers on most of those days. And I think his quality, his attention to detail was very high. And I imagine the amount of time it would have taken me to do the same thing would have been a lot.
Dude, and you have a multiple head system and you're doing all sorts of different things. We are not apples to apples on this in the slightest.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So another thing with electrification, right, is we're talking about, Osmond, you've got this hot tub, you've got the car charger, you've got mini splits, you've got an induction range. I'm guessing your washer and dryer may or may not be electric, but these are all high amperage draws on a home. And we talk about service panels or electrical panels for a home. I'm in a 1970s home and it's rated for 100 amps. So pretty quickly, there's a deficit in the amount of appliances that I can run at the same time. Up until about 2023, there weren't really many options aside from a service upgrade. Now there are a few companies that are beginning to roll out smart panels. And what they'll do is they'll switch the breaker, so to speak, on which circuit gets the electricity at a certain time. You're not running your dryer 24/7. So why would you earmark a breaker for 24/7 usage, right? You're not charging your car 24/7. Why have a specific reservation for it? So these smart panels, and I'm sure with the help of AI, will get even better, but they essentially, you can program them, right? If I plug in my car and it's nighttime and the dryer's not running, it'll switch it over and charge my car. I activate the dryer, it'll change priorities. And so that's kind of a nifty way to get around and maybe improve. They're touting, consumption reduction and kind of better energy bills and things as well. But it's certainly something that could be looked into if you want to avoid going for that full service upgrade. Looking at prices, shit, I don't know. They look pretty neck and neck, but look, it's kind of what you're looking at.
Like
yeah, they 2023 NEC. Yeah. Okay. And I looked that up too. Apparently Boulder is one of the piloting cities that is running out smart panels. Yeah.
So when you're shopping for houses here in Boulder, one of the things that you should always do, and we do when we look at homes with our clients, is find the electrical panel and open it. And if it has less than 100, you're going to have a real problem. Less than 150, still a challenge. What we really like to see is 200 amp service to the house. And service upgrades are not in the scope of things, right? You're buying a $2 million house in Boulder. The service upgrade is not going to break your budget, but it's still something to factor in. And the other piece that I think is, and I've already alluded to it, is market acceptance of electrification. And market acceptance is absolutely increasing for heat pumps. It's increasing for people that have used induction. There's two types of people.
Yeah,
right? There's the people that have never used induction, and in their minds it is the old school electric stovetop. And there are people that have used it and realize it is far superior to gas. It is hotter, it heats faster, and there's better control. There's micro-level control over temperature. It is phenomenal. And I cannot imagine ever going back to gas now that we've had induction as our stovetop for whatever, 3.5 years, 4 years. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. No,
we're seeing that in higher and higher end homes. You're seeing induction cooktops, you're seeing heat pumps, you're seeing geothermal even in some cases. Of course, you're seeing car chargers in virtually every higher end home. You're seeing lots of solar panels. In our listing at 605 Alpine, you also had a Tesla Powerwall, which that person that bought that house got it for a steal because the Powerwall is really quite pricey. Yeah. And when I ran the numbers on the payback of the Powerwall, like I said, it didn't make any sense given how it works today. Net metering and the incentive just didn't add up. So I took that off of the bid. I'm like, we already have propane generation. It doesn't make sense to add the Powerwall other than for emotional kind of benefit. And the part that really killed it was sometimes up here in the mountains, you have a full day power outage. We have not had that happen that often. But the propane generator just keeps on keeping on. That Powerwall is done in like a couple of hours. It is not giving you climate change resiliency, like in the event of a major storm, takes out all the power lines or takes out major power lines and you're out for a few days. The Powerwall ain't got it, but propane home generation does. Although one thing I will add is that you could, in theory, charge during, and this is what happens I'm going to say it, at Burning Man, we charge a battery bank during the day with a small folding solar array. And by noon, we're topped up. And then that battery powers our fridge and our Starlink when we need it so that we have the ability to communicate with the outside world and keep our drinks and food cold and food safe. It works perfectly, right?
Yeah.
The total cost for that setup, if you want climate change resiliency, $2,500.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we didn't even think about like the EcoFlows and the Anchor batteries that you can tow around and stuff that are just getting insanely popular. I think there's some that are like suitcase sized and you get like an hour or two out of your house. Another thing is like Hyundai's, how do you say it in the States? Hyundai's Ioniq 5s and 6s have reverse flow. And you can power just the bare essentials in your house for like a week. Your fridge, a couple other little things, and you're good for a week just with the battery in your car. So setting up some sort of situation for that. If I remember correctly, Hyundai they include the cable that lets you reverse power back out from your car into the home. There's really neat ones. Yeah. I think Ford's, the F-150s are doing that now too.
I've heard the F-150s do that, and there's an architect I follow on social media and that I've met once or twice who did that with his Ford Lightning.
Yeah.
With the home he built in Boulder County. And the only part that I remember about that aspect of his project was that he said it was way harder than he ever imagined.
Really?
Was to get that benefit of reverse the power back to the house. I would love it because we already have a Tesla, which we bought before Elon went crazy. And I imagine the next vehicle we buy when my daily driver, the Grenadier,
that thing's going forever.
It's probably going to go forever, but I'm already looking at like Rivians and thinking that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Yeah.
The R2 that's coming out, the R1 is amazing, but we don't have a 3-car garage, and I really don't have a leg to stand on.
You want to keep that in the garage, yeah.
So anyway, we'll talk more cars at another time. That's quite the Carveout. But the takeaway from all of this is that it now is the time if you're trying to take advantage of these expiring incentives. And if you are betting on AI dramatically increasing consumption of electricity and inflation possibly increasing the nominal cost of electricity as well, the modeling I was doing says the cost per kilowatt could be double in a decade. And that's a good baseline to start. And likely these numbers are going to work for you. And the only part that's unclear, and I see you added this, the potential for fusion reactors dramatically cheapening. Like what I think is actually probably going to happen is similar to the dot-com boom. You didn't put fission on here. You said on-site reactors. Is what you were. Yeah. What did I say?
You said fusion. I was like, man, if we got fusion, we're a whole different landscape.
Well, there is I mean, this is not my area of expertise, okay?
Yeah.
But the length of time for sustained fusion reactions keeps increasing.
Yeah.
It's not indefinite yet. Like, I think the longest one was almost 30 minutes, was like 22 minutes maybe.
I think
and
that's
so
about
that
dead on.
technology sounds futuristic. And if it shows up faster than we think, it might cause the cost of electricity to plummet.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because fusion would be way better than solar panels if you could put cheap reactors everywhere. With all of that said, it's really a gamble, right? And so in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a rush to install fiber, and there was a gold mine in fiber, a gold rush in fiber, and then the cost for fiber plummeted off a cliff after the dot-com boom, and eventually most of that dark fiber, my understanding, it got lit, but a lot of those businesses were able to complete their fiber build-outs for a fraction of what they thought they could because the cost of all the componentry fell too. And so right now there's a gold rush in AI, and a parallel gold rush in data centers, and another gold rush happening with power plants.
Yeah.
And power plant addition, adding gigawatts in the United States is really tedious and time-consuming. But adding gigawatts elsewhere in the world, particularly in China, is really cheap. Of course, well, it's not cheap, but it's fast, and they're adding tons of it. Mm-hmm. I suspect that the pattern could be very similar, where you see like the gold rush happens, and then there's a correction in terms of pricing. So there are two wild cards in my mind. One is the gold rush swing up and down, and the other is fusion dramatically cheapening production across the world.
There's these small modular reactors, they're still, there's like a ton of regulation with nuclear energy, but the general idea is that because they're smaller, think like in terms of a disaster, you could get a reactor there on the back of a semi-truck. But also, if there's an impending disaster, you can remove it so it doesn't go belly up. And these are still fission. But, Meta bought 3 Mile Island. And there's now more production of nuclear reactors in the United States for AI and for data centers. And I'm so pro-nuclear, it's ridiculous. I think it is the baseline solution to renewables, battery backups and everything like that. I really like to see the technology advancements. I like the flywheel batteries and that kind of stuff, but nuclear just makes sense to me. Sue me, don't.
You're the only person I know outside of academia that has their personal Geiger counter. That is something. This is
no
no show and tell at the moment.
But anyhow, so I've got a lot of like chagrin seeing like the companies starting the nuclear becoming more popular again in the U.S. But I'm really excited to see it, and I think there's a lot riding on AI, and there's a lot of like AI has the potential to literally change everything. So I'm kind of like gung-ho for it, but I'm also a little worried about the increase in costs and things and the short-term impacts. But it would literally all be worth it if the long-term payoff is superintelligence, right? So it's like
superintelligence that doesn't want to kill us. Like, that's the part that's
a bit of a knock on
really
wood on that one.
Right, but the potential for superintelligence is mind-blowing. But in the here and now for ordinary house buyers, I would be looking at that electrical panel.
Yeah.
And I would be thinking about electrification in your next home improvement project. And if you hear any, hot air blowing around regulations taking away your right to install gas appliances, it doesn't even like don't get caught up in that. Look at the benefits of all these electric appliances. They're so much better than gas. Forget about being forced to. You should want to in the majority of cases.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to, it's frequently because you haven't really delved into it. Like most home buyers that when they hear it's electric, they wrinkle their nose at the stove. Or buyers that are like, wait, you mean there's no central AC? It's like, well, hold on. Like the MLS doesn't give you the heat pump option. And mini split
that's
option.
outdated.
And that really is central AC in the rooms that matter. Like, do you really need AC in every single room of the house all the time? Every room is, room level control for forced air, it doesn't work very well. Room level control for radiant works okay because you have individual circuits. And the same is true for heat pumps. They work great and they're quieter and they're nicer. Like, you should really consider it. So there is momentum. The landscape is changing. I'm seeing it in our buyers and their recognition of these options in the market. And you as a buyer should be really at least aware that this is the trend and it's accelerating. And you as a homeowner should be looking, if you want to take advantage of those rebates, get on it now, because the contractors I talked to were booking October for the installs.
Dang. Okay, yeah.
And that's when ours is booked, in October.
Yeesh. I'll say I'm probably not going to make the solar cut this year, but my heat pump, I've been somewhat tracking the costs, and I'll get back to you guys next year on kind of what the return was and how much it was offset. My napkin math was I would be out of pocket on the heat pump after next year and all the tax returns about $600. So we'll see if that's correct, but that's part of the why I did it, and yeah, that's me.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I know. Fake news, Ham.
All right. You ready to move on, Ham? You ready to move on, Hamish?
Totally. Yeah, I think we chat.
Let's talk about just one buyer for shameless self-promotion. This is the segment of our podcast when we discuss our active buyers and sellers and what they might be looking for, and we're just going to talk about one of them. And this is a really good friend and client who has been on the hunt for the right large rambling ranch. Not large, too large, like probably under 3,500 square feet, more than 2,000 square feet, and preferably almost all of that on one level in a home that doesn't need lots of maintenance, doesn't have extensive landscaping, on a level lot, would prefer to stay in Boulder, but willing to look outside of Boulder as well, and is generally flexible on price, but is not looking to pay a premium for a premium location. Like, doesn't need to be in Newlands, doesn't need to be in Mapleton Hill, has a house to sell, but is not constrained by that home to make an offer. In fact, would prefer to make an offer on the home that they're buying and acquire it, move in, and then sell the home that they're currently in. And so they've been looking for a while, still haven't found what they've wanted. Most of the inventory we look at is just so far gone in terms of deferred maintenance, and they don't have the capacity to take on major construction projects. Or even moderate remodels. We've actually offered to guide them through that process as an additional extent of relationship, like a service extension, to help them, because we would like to help solve this problem, but we have not as yet been able to find the right, the Goldilocks house that makes sense. So if you're out there with that type of house, maybe it's in Fraser Meadows, maybe it's in, it could be in Table Mesa, but much more likely in Fraser Meadows or Keewaydin or Park East, or North Central Boulder. Those locations
in North Central too. Yeah.
They also would consider Superior. I don't think they're going to move east to Louisville, but Superior might work. And that's sort of the footprint of our sweet spot of where we've been looking. And if you have something like that, that's, I would say, quality construction, not a flip, not a spec project, something that you improve for yourself and want somebody that values craftsmanship and intelligent design, and will pay market value. This could be a really good option. So reach out to us if you have a listing or thinking of selling your home that matches those criteria.
Yeah. I'll say this is the buyer that I went on a showing with, and one of the homes had a bathtub in the middle of the primary bedroom. So if you're worried that yours might not be sparkly enough, that's what you're competing with. So reach out.
Well, we've kissed a lot of frogs. All right. And with that, it's time to talk about lessons from sales of the week. And this week, we're going to be talking about 5 different properties, all Boulder-centric. And I like talking about Boulder because it's our fair city, but it's not the only place we serve buyers and sellers. Just to be clear, our brokerage covers everything from the southern suburbs of Denver all the way to Fort Collins, and includes the mountain towns. We also do sometimes work in the resorts. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if our footprint, or if your property or your search is in our footprint. But these particular properties are Boulder centric. And the first one is super interesting. It is 1025 5th Street in the city of Boulder, located just below Flagstaff. So there's a steep kind of cliff-like hillside on the west side of town, just north of Baseline Road, and Flagstaff curls up on the west of this. And this particular property, a lot of them were developed before before the city grew into this space. So some of these properties have been annexed into the city and some of them have not. It's a premium location. It's a location where you will see gorgeous mansions that have sweeping views of the city below and have really easy access to open space. Like it is a really, really lovely spot with some caveats. Like depending on the topography, for example, you might hear traffic on Flagstaff Road. And we know that that's been a motivation for some sellers to liquidate their property because they've been so annoyed by the constant racing motorcycles on Flagstaff. But it's very hit or miss based on the topography of the mountain behind it and how that might block sound. So I'm not saying as a blanket issue, it's not a blanket issue for everything in this location, but it is something to think about and investigate if you're buying here. But this particular, and the other piece is, are you in the city or are you in unincorporated Boulder County? And the house directly adjacent to this property was on the market recently. That property is in the county. This particular property is in the city. They're right next to each other. But the difference can be massive in terms of the home's potential. And we have discussed in previous podcasts, the county had in place a temporary moratorium on larger homes. And they did that by capping your home size. If you went to them and said, I want an addition, they would do an analysis, tell you this is your neighborhood, and the median house size was, let's say, 4,000 square feet, which is probably a little bit bigger than most median home sizes in most neighborhoods. And if you had a house like this one that was at 3,300 square feet, they would say, well, you can add 700. And all your design cannot go bigger than 700, so that's the median. Previously it was 20%, I believe, above the median. 25. Now we're capped 25% above the median. And this moratorium capped you at the median. So if you happen to have a home that's larger than the median, you get a value boost for free. If you happen to have a home that had a lot of potential because of its large lot and its view and other factors like its location, and you thought a big piece of that value was its potential to put a big family house on it, well, that's just been taken away by the county. Because the county made that temporary moratorium permanent. What was the date, Hamish? July?
Like April? I had misread. The temporary one expired in July 17th, but they revisited it in May. And I know I just said April, but May 17th, I believe, is when they decided to hard code it, essentially. Yeah.
So it's permanent. It doesn't expire, and you cannot make a home larger than the median size in your neighborhood, whatever arbitrary determination they make of what is your neighborhood. And that includes homes in the mountains that have no homes anywhere near it. They have neighborhoods according to the county.
So this, right?
But this particular property is in the city, so entirely different regime for managing permitting, and also has limits on house sizes based on solar access, based on the relationship of square footage to the size of the lot, and also the types of shadows. That's the solar access. Sorry, I already mentioned that. Of course, setbacks, the normal front and side yard setbacks, also in play in all properties, but the city has its own rules. You cannot shade. Hold on, I keep going on about solar access. One of the things you want to talk about with your architect, which is whom you should be consulting with, not your realtor, about a home's potential, is its build out, its building envelope. And that has fundamentally changed with the county's temporary moratorium and now permanent moratorium. So this property, 1025 5th Street, was built in 1929. It is on a 3.5 acre lot, which is gigantic by city standards. And the house, as it stands now, is 3,300 square feet. Without the basement, about 2,000 square feet, does not have a garage, and has been owned by the same family for a very long time. If you look at the tax records, you'll see the family name goes back at least to the 70s in the easily available public record, and I suspect might go back even further than that. The family that eventually sold it through their trust acquired it, it looks like in 1973. But I'm not entirely sure of that because they're mentioned as the seller, not the buyer, in 1973. So the records that are here on the MLS, I don't think are accurate. But the name goes back to the 70s. So you're looking at least 50 years this property has been owned by the same family. And what a stunning and adorable and cute property it is, with so much privacy and so much potential. Luckily, most of that potential is still retained because it's in the city, unlike the neighboring property that's in the county. But the neighboring property, which was literally a fire sale, it took a while to sell.
We actually talked about it on the pod. I can't remember which one. But yeah,
if you can find it easily, we can link to it. That one had tons of fire risk, but huge house, totally different scenario. Buying that one was all about reconstructing within the existing footprint. So this is why it's really important to understand the regulations that impact value. And this property did not take long to sell, despite how little is under contract above $3 million in the city of Boulder. The high end of Boulder is pretty much dead. I don't care what the luxury agents the ones that consider themselves luxury agents, the ones that the named agents that might be telling you that no, it's a great time to sell. It's not. Like 8%, 9% of inventory above $3 million. Last time we checked was under contract. Hamish, I don't know if you want to jump in and check again, but it doesn't matter. It's almost certainly less than 10%. And this one, which means 90% of homes not selling, this one was on the market not very long. It was available for a total of 49 days before it went to pending. So almost 2 months, not a ton of time, enough time to do your due diligence and pull the trigger, and it sold for 5.9. So it sold for $300,000 below the list price, which I think is, what is that, 5%? Like a pretty relatively minor discount, not a major discount.
4.84, good on you. Yeah.
Yep. And so great buy for the buyer. It's one of those things that you could be looking for a very long time, and if it pops up, you never want to let this one out of your portfolio because of its scarcity. And I'll be curious to see what they build. Like, certainly they're going to have to add a garage, right? Like, you don't, like,
good point.
A property like this and only 3,300 square feet. I would not be surprised to see 5,000 plus square foot house on this lot while the rules apply. So word to the wise to the owner, do not delay your permits, because the writing's on the wall. The hatred of the I don't know if to call it staff or council, or if it's public opinion. The hatred for large houses continues, and the pendulum continues to swing towards more and more restrictions being placed on you for, frankly, taste, right? They really just don't like the way it looks to having such a large house. But 3.5 acres, you'd think, who can even see it?
That lot goes, it's almost like directly off if you're on Panorama Point on Flagstaff and just look straight off. That's the lot. And it is huge. And that home is adorable. It's larger than I thought, looking at the photos, being 3,300 square feet. But that is it looks well kept. It's very cute, and it's nestled into the landscaping there. And it's either like a great candidate for a horror movie set or a love story about like fantasy creatures or something, you know?
I mean, it looks like the Hansel and Gretel, like the house the witch lived in. Like, it's stone on the outside is almost certainly, it's likely real stone. It's not likely to be stone facade. Like, there was master masons involved in building this house, almost certainly. The interior is completely dated. Like, nothing really has been updated in decades. But that's part of its charm, and it's really not about remodeling a kitchen or a bathroom when you're looking at this type of estate property. It's the type of thing, I guess this is a personal preference of mine. I really like understated on the outside and, beautiful and,
Same here.
And well appointed on the inside. And this is not a home that is designed to impress people. Like, on the outside, like, you pull up or you have guests come to this house, they're going to know the neighborhood they're in. And they may realize how private and secluded this house is and the amazing views. But it's not trying to impress you. Like, it's not ostentatious. It's lovely. It reminds me of homes on Nantucket, in that same philosophy. The ones I really prefer that have that kind of that
keep
sense
to themselves,
of
kind of
refined opulence from an era where showboating your wealth and your success was looked down on, as being, I don't know,
drawing attention.
Vulgar. Vulgar. Right?
Yeah.
This is a home that is not trying to prove anything. So awesome property.
Yeah.
Great acquisition for the buyer. As Ferris Bueller said, if you have the means, I recommend picking one up. All right, 2828 4th Street is our next one, and this also illustrates conditions at the high end. So this particular location is nice, not particularly amazing. It's Newlands. Newlands is a great neighborhood, but it's not an absolutely exclusive neighborhood in the way that in the way that the last listing was, the one on 5th Street below Flagstaff. That's truly exclusive in terms of, like, there's like 6 possibilities, right, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
And most of them are never available. Newlands has plenty of inventory available at any given time. It's the biggest challenges have been finding homes that have a sense of privacy, and finding homes that have enough beds and baths, and finding homes that are turnkey. Well, this house looks like it has everything that in those check boxes, right? It has 4,400 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 6 baths, 2-car garage, built in 2015, and even though it's now 10 years old, looks absolutely current and turnkey. So if you are looking for a functional, larger family house with these attributes, and you need or want to be in Newlands, typically the price for that sort of asset is north of 4. And the more updated the property is, the more likely you're going to see prices that approach or even exceed 5. And this is probably the best time in the last 10 years to look for this type of house, because there's a lot of inventory at the high end in Boulder, as I just alluded to. But if you have all these attributes, functional family house, 2-car garage, quiet private lot, larger than typical lot, all of these things are going to help the home sell quickly. And that's pretty much what happened here. It didn't fly off the market. It was listed on May 27th at 5.3. It took 3 weeks before a buyer locked it down, and that buyer negotiated a $300,000 discount from the list price. Cash buyer, which is pretty typical for this price point, and
No concessions.
No disclosed concessions. I think it's the take-home lesson is that if you have a home that is in the $3 million plus category in Boulder and you're thinking of listing it, it really better be turnkey. Like, you should invest substantial resources into improving its marketability, and then you need to price it very aggressively. And if it is a newer home like this one, not even 10 years old, or just 10 years old, or maybe it's 11 if it was built in 2015, so make that 11, so anywhere under 15 years old, even then it might need some refreshing, and certainly needs staging. And it always helps to have bought a home or built a home that is straight up the fairway in terms of its market appeal. So this is a good one for our client, by the way, that is on 4th Street and would consider selling their home for the right price. Their home, I think, is closer to the 90s. It's now been they've spent money updating the kitchen. They've painted it a contemporary color, and it looks amazing. And I think it has 5 bedrooms and 6 baths, very similar. And I think it might even be bigger than this house. So if you're looking for this and are okay with a little older design but modernized, reach out. I think that price point would be, I don't want to put a number out there. We need to,
but reach out.
Need to discuss with our client how it would compare. I mean, this is surround architecture and a local builder, and not, and about 10 years old. That's a very different animal. So I think that covers it for 2828 4th Street. Well played by buyer and seller. I think it's a solid investment. Okay.
No notes from me.
Okay, great. This one you might have some notes on, Hamish, because this was a direct competitor, this next property, to one of our listings. 2940 9th Street is a home that is located just east of North Boulder Park on a larger than typical lot, 10,589 square feet. It's a 50s era ranch style house, 2-car attached garage, at about 2,000 square feet. The house is on the smaller side, but the lot size and the proximity to the park were the key selling points. And we both showed this house to multiple buyers, and we also looked at this house as a competitor to one of our listings. And it was quite beat up and run down inside. When I first saw it, the tenant was still there, and they were not making it easy to sell. It was listed originally in 2024 in March, so well over a year ago, March of 24, at 1.75. They cut the price to 1.625, in April. Oh, nope, that was an accident. They cut it to 1.625 and then quickly jumped it back up to 1.7. So you always wonder when you see that sort of like, wait a minute, the same day you went 1.625 and then went to 1.7. I think that might be one of those we would sell it for 1.625, but we want to drop the price to 1.7 moments. This is why it's really important if you're going to have price changes. If you're an agent listening to this, get that price change in writing, because this could have been a miscommunication. But in any event, they dropped it to 1.7 and nothing happened, and they pulled it off the market in October. They brought it back this July at 1.75. I guess in the middle they had a weird double listing, Hamish, that I'm just sort of ignoring. Like it was at 1.675 on a second MLS number, but on the same MLS. So they had a concurrent... Oh, I guess they had withdrawn it from one and relisted it on the other. Like, it was messy. There's something messy going on in this listing history that could point to two different agents involved. It's not exactly clear. And I don't need to go into agent gossip right now. It's just, it has an interesting withdrawn, not expired, reactivated for a month, and acquired in July at 1.675. Okay. That was last year. It relisted this July.
Oh,
so
wow.
This is the confusing part, right? Because it says withdrawn and expired. So let me back up and tell the history again, because I think I screwed it up. First on the market in March at 1.75, dropped it to 1.70, 1.7 in April, and then there's a messy listing history, but it sold for 1.675 at the end of July of 2024. And then the original listing automatically expired, apparently, in October. But that listing had no relevance because the property had already sold. Well, that same agent that represented the buyer last July relisted it this year at 1.75. It was on the market just 3 days, and it sold for 1.7. So they bought it at 1.675. They sold it at 1.705. So a $30,000 delta between what they paid for it over the course of a year. And based on the photos, it doesn't look like they did anything. Like, it just sat there for a year.
There's some weirdness on the roof in one of the first few interior pictures. And I'm trying to remember from when we saw it, but I don't believe there was a wall there, so maybe we didn't notice. It was occupied by tenants when we went, and boy, does this listing look better than when we went to go see it.
The tenants made it look horrible, and a classic lesson to be very, very careful listing a home with a tenant in place. But when you look at the listing from this time around, from this July, it says seller has architectural plans that are ready to be submitted and can be reviewed upon request. And in fact, they've got, I think, a rendering in their photo stack of that house.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, so the new listing has a rendering of of what the home will look like after renovations. So I think what happened in this scenario,
it didn't make it to Realtor.com.
Yeah, it's on the actual MLS. You'll see photos of the rendering of the future home. And the story that you can read the tea leaves is that they bought it thinking they're going to build an amazing home. And they even hired an architect after acquiring the property and have spent pretty much a year coming to Jesus and realizing a couple of things. One, the market for high-end homes is saturated, and they can buy a home turnkey without the construction risk that's better than this house. And yes, they've spent money acquiring it, and now they've spent a year doing their due diligence only to discover that, the cost of construction is extremely high in Boulder. There's another year once you actually get your permit before the house is ready, and you're taking construction risk. Plus, the park has a privacy issue, right? Like, it's a super popular area. And I don't know about you. Like, this is like the opposite of ostentatious choice. Like, do you want people to see your gigantic, modernized, stunning home every time they come into the park, or would you rather be a few streets over where it's a little more private? And who knows what the actual reasons are? I'm just conjecturing. That's just possibilities for what happened. But I suspect that there was a realization over the reality. Ooh. You hear that?
Man, that was a big one. Yeah, that was thunder.
I hope I don't get electrocuted.
Yeah, me too.
Yes. So the Electrification podcast having
Electric
that
Avenue.
happen, truly Electric Avenue. So who knows what happened, but they lost money right? Because with only a $25,000 or $30,000 delta between what they paid for it and what they sold it for, that's not enough to cover commissions. And the cost for hiring architects, developing plans that are shovel ready, right? Like they're ready to submit the plans. The broker remark says buyers are selling because of life changes. Yeah, life changes, like they realized how expensive it was. I'm not sure, but it says life happened and they had to pivot. So who knows what really happened? But it's
They
an
lost
interesting.
some on it, right?
It could quite be that they had like a divorce. They had something bad happened. Okay, like there could have been personal circumstances too.
Oh yeah, I mean like they lost money on it, right? Like a decent.
Oh, almost certainly.
Yeah.
Almost 100%. They lost money between hiring the architect and paying the agents involved. Money was lost. They didn't lose that much. Like it actually gained value from what they paid for it. But
Yeah.
I think that, what's interesting is the buyer got themselves in a way a deal, because if it's true that they hired a good architect to do the design work, like the design work could still have a lot of value that they're not paying for if they
That's a
like
good
the
point.
design.
Yeah. I pretty much agree with you on everything, and I don't even it is nice to be across from a park because then you get slightly better views of the mountains. Redeeming quality, you decide, but that is
No,
nice.
true. Good point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Otherwise, the tenants were great, but I just can't get past. It was so disorganized. We didn't know who who was in the building on our showing, and when we went through, it was so strange.
It was chaos, and the house was super choppy. And
It was.
Our conclusion was this house is a scrape. Like there's nothing redeeming in the existing structure, so you're paying dirt value, right? Actually, you're paying more than 1.7 was their acquisition price. They also need to deconstruct it and go back to a dirt lot. So add another 50 grand or 60 grand, because you can't just scrape it into a dumpster in Boulder. You have to deconstruct the house. Any useful elements, including the studs in the walls, have to be hauled over to resource. Take all the nails out and haul them to resource. That is labor intensive to take apart.
It's going to make all the old heads that complain about the old growth not being used to build homes anymore. It's going to make them happy.
Wow.
Tongue in cheek.
I'm just going to say nothing makes people that are grumpy and hell bent on being grumpy happy. Like there's this mythical image of what Boulder used to be, and it hasn't been that in decades. But there are some people that have lived here They've lived here for a long time period, and they resent the changes that have happened in our community, and nothing is ever going to make them happy. Even if you took apart even if you named every tree in the city and refused to allow them to be cut down, even if you painstakingly pulled out every nail and carefully reconstructed a modern home from it, it still wouldn't be acceptable, because it doesn't match their nostalgic, mythical view of what Boulder used to be.
There's a show that I used to watch, and one of the dudes ran for a city council, and his motto was "change is bad," and that's it. That was his whole policy. And it just reminds me of that.
Well, but I mean, I get it. I totally understand. John, what's his name? The Yellowstone character when he runs for office.
Oh shoot!
Was it John Dalton? What was the name of the ranch?
A few episodes.
Oh man, I can't remember. But his basic platform is, I am the wall that progressive change breaks upon. I want none of these things. I want no people from outside of our community moving here. I don't want any ski resorts. This is not Montana. Montana should be for people that have lived here for a long time. Blah blah blah. And what's really interesting, and Hamish, I noticed you didn't bring this up. You were going to bring up, the lack of inclusivity with solar, or the inequity of solar benefiting some people,
inequity with it,
and not benefiting others. What's interesting is I see Boulder getting more diverse, not less diverse. I see Boulder trying really hard to make it a welcoming place, and yet there's also people that feel like it's never going to be welcoming enough. It's never going to be affordable enough. And it's never going to be dense enough with housing options. They think that you should be able to keep our quality of life and be able to buy, a house for $200,000 in Boulder. And unfortunately, that's never going to happen. And the efforts to make Boulder affordable are actually contrary to the ability to buy a house affordably, because you're building rentals. These aren't options to buy, and you've reduced the ability to develop. Until recently, you couldn't do duplexes and triplexes. That's changing, but that's been out of our code for a long time. So, I mean, Boulder is likely to just keep gentrifying, keep Aspenizing, if you will, and have a whole secondary class. I'm not saying they're second class. I'm saying there's a whole entire group of people that choose to live here, but unfortunately cannot afford to buy here. And you can't wave that away with a magic wand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I didn't get into the solar thing because we weren't quite there on that. Yeah. And then I had like a whole thing about the ducted. You're bringing back the closing table, and now I'm going to the closing table. We should move on. All
right, let's move on. 3150 Lane Court. And this is a property in Table Mesa. It's a classic two-story built in the 60s. 2,700 square feet, 4 bedrooms, all on the upper level, 3 bathrooms. This is a home of which there are a number of examples in Table Mesa. I will not say that there are hundreds of examples, but we've seen this house. In fact, I've listed and sold this house, and I've helped buyers acquire this house. It is a builder grade home, meaning that the design was a builder that printed this same exact house however many dozen times in Table Mesa. But it remains a scarcity because most of Table Mesa homes are bi-levels and tri-levels, and this one is a classic two-story. And the classic two-story is much more in demand. And despite this house needing a plethora of updates, and despite it being on not exactly the best corner, like Heidelberg's a great street, but Lane is a little lollipop off of Heidelberg, and this is right on the corner of Heidelberg and Lane. So you've got a little bit of a street on one side. I would think that's a little less than ideal from a privacy perspective, but livable. And if you look at the photos, it looks like so much of this home is original that it's astounding. They've done some things like pour a back patio, and colored concrete, but not much. Like, it's almost like a museum to the time period the home was built. The popcorn ceilings, the arched doorways, the narrow galley kitchen, which with cabinetry that could be original. It kind of looks like it's a 90s cabinetry, but it could be original. But even so, it's just incredibly dated all over the place. And last time I sold this exact model house, I don't know, might have been 10 years ago, and it sold immediately. It attracted tons of interest. I love that you know the model. Yeah. I know this house. It's great. Yeah. It's got a nice basement inside. It's not too big, not too small, and it works for the majority of home buyers. So I think this is a really solid acquisition for these buyers. I think it was also priced right at 1.5. It did go under contract once before. Right away it went under contract. That buyer bailed out within 2 weeks, and then a few days after that it went under contract again, and it sold for $25,000 below list with no additional disclosed concessions. So this is just a solid investment and a really
indicator,
good comp.
Right?
This is an excellent comp for this exact house all over Table Mesa, and then just roll up the price from here with updates.
Yeah. Looks like it might have power lines. It looks like there's a power line coming from the back of the building, but that's about it.
That's everything, Heyman. Everything has power lines in Boulder that's in the older neighborhoods. Yeah. Most of Boulder still has aerials, not buried power lines. And this is just neighborhood distribution power lines.
How it goes.
Interestingly enough, the post doesn't go above the second story. It's like the middle of the wall.
I know, right?
Okay.
Great. Yeah, why not?
Sure. There's one telephone line. That's the one on the left, or maybe a cable line, and the one on the right is the
power.
It doesn't look unusual. It's just neighborhood distribution. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's hit our next one and our last sale of the week. 2794 Linden Drive. Listed for 1.3, was under contract within 9 days, sold for $1,243,500. It did sell to the first buyer who locked it down about 2 weeks after listing. And so plenty of time for most buyers to come see it. 70s era house in Pine Brook. Pine Brook is one of our little mountain communities that are directly adjacent to the city of Boulder. I suspect it was the one that caused the blue line to be enacted because of
What's the blue line?
The blue line is the highest the city will provide water. And that was, I believe, passed in the 70s. I don't want to go too far down that history because I could be wrong about the dates. But this is one of those homes this whole neighborhood and subdivision was all built out in the 70s. And it remains very popular today. This is a 3,000 square foot house, fairly dated, but custom. Like all the homes up there are custom, unlike Table Mesa, where they are not custom throughout most of Table Mesa. This home has some really classic lines, great big windows to bring in the mountain outdoors. Like this is a home that, when people were moving here in the 70s, they were kind of inspired by John Denver, even into the 80s. And this is a home that, brings that Colorado feel, but is only minutes from the city of Boulder. You hop down Linden Drive and ride your bike or drive a car. It's super easy to get into town. Like you're looking at like 10 minutes, right, to get downtown. And Pine Brook, so the takeaway from this, is a couple things. One, I think it was priced right and for the need of updates and the size and the views and the location, it makes sense. I don't think it had stunning views. It has more of like a mountain feel, but not a bad option. But what most buyers and a lot of listing agents fail to understand is that Pine Brook and Sunshine Canyon and 4 Mile Canyon and Sugarloaf trade quite differently from each other. And if you are looking to price your mountain home to sell, you really need to be careful not to mix comps or put too much weight on comps that are not in your canyon. And then the distance from the drive time from your door to downtown Boulder is crucial. And once you start getting past 15 minutes, the demand falls off a cliff. And you have to be really careful pricing high once you're past 15 minutes. This home seemed priced very, very agreeably, and I'm not surprised it sold pretty fast. 9 days on markets is relatively fast for this market, and they still managed to negotiate a pretty aggressive discount. So don't be afraid to negotiate aggressively, even if the house has only been on the market a week. I think these buyers got themselves a really attractive home. Hopefully they left a budget for updates. It's got a 3.5 acre lot. The split layout is a little less than ideal, but very popular back then, meaning the upper, like 2 of the bedrooms are on the upper, 2 are on the main. 2-car attached garage, kind of like turnkey. But the biggest take home was definitely treat these canyons as differently. And if you're thinking about hiring a listing agent and they show up with an algorithm that tells you to price like it's in Pine Brook, but you're in Sugarloaf, you may want to think twice because they are selling you a very different. That's a gotcha. Yeah. That's a gotcha for sure. They are not the same market. So keep that in mind. And that is our Sales of the Week segment, Hamish. We're through it.
Yeah. How do you think insurability is on this one, being in the foothills?
Great question. Sorry, I need to create more space for you to say what you think.
No, you're good. Because sometimes I don't have anything to say.
All right, fair enough. Well, insurability sucks in the mountains. We have a handful of carriers. The cost is sometimes 2 to 3 times what it would be for the same house in town. And then there's homes that are moderate fire risk that aren't even this far into the mountains, that are just tucked up against the wildland urban interface, like Dakota Ridge, that are seeing, and all of Table Mesa, frankly, are seeing insurance premiums skyrocket. I don't think that's going to keep people from buying homes in the mountains. I think it will impact the sale prices, but so far we're not seeing massive slack in demand due to fire risk. I think people tend to forget after a few years about a fire, and then it's all like pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
The and only then they're like, crunch. It's instead of costing $2,500 to insure, it's $5,000 a year to insure. They're like, okay, no big deal.
Yep. It's been a while since the fires happened. It's fine. Only downside is you go up 28th far enough towards Lyons, and then there's the burn scarring around there. I've been with buyers, and we were looking a little bit more east of that, and they didn't want the home because it was so close to the burn scar, and it kept reminding them of the danger. Yeah. I
mean, after a few years, the burn scar looks lovely. I live with burn scar
it goes to
all
a meadow.
Around me, and it creates so much open space. Most of those trees are down, and it's great.
Yeah.
The other thing to think about, since we're going to riff on this for just one more thought, is that homes of this era do not have the same hardiness to wildfire. Like they have wood siding, they have composite shingle roofs, they have trees often that are planted way too close to them. And if you are looking for, they don't have fire suppression systems. So if you are buying a home in the mountains, be sure to understand the price differences between homes like this one, built in the 70s without all those features, and something, say, built after 2000. I'm not sure exactly what year, but the fire resistance codes and the wind load codes have gotten much more strict.
Yeah,
like a newer home, when it's super windy, is actually quite quiet, but an old house creaks and moans like you're on a ship in a heavy wind event, and there's a lot of wind in the mountains, so keep that in mind. All right, I think that's probably a good stopping point for sales of the week.
Satisfied. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I bringing in the news?
You are, but we're skipping. We're skipping. Yeah. Well, jump in. Do you want to talk about the meme of the week first?
Shoot. Yeah. I'm a little dismayed or saddened because the statement that I thought was released by the astronomer CEO turned out to be satire. But yeah, how about that? You go to a Coldplay concert with your side piece? I don't know. And get outed into the whole world. Turn it into a whole meme.
I mean, it's how do you escape like the water cooler conversation around something this crazy, right? The look of shock and embarrassment, the friend's look of what appears to be glee at her, shocked, laughing shock, like so a friend that also works at the company.
That's what I saw.
I mean, I see it as just a massive breach of integrity for both of these individuals, especially a head of HR.
The
hooking up
implication
with
on
the
that one.
CEO, and who knows whether they may not have actually been cheating. They may have had a relationship with their partners that allowed them to have open romances with other people. That's certainly not an unpopular thing, particularly in Boulder. We know people, but embarrassing your spouse is like and their family, the shame that must come from this is just so brutal. It's also such a lapse of integrity. It's just so painful.
You ever put yourself in the shoes of stuff like this? So like for me, I'm wondering if they just played it cool, would it have even made a ripple? You know?
Yeah, if they had just played it cool, no one probably would have noticed, but they reacted.
I didn't know Astronomer was a company until now.
It's probably great for everyone knows about Astronomer now. I don't even know what they do, but I know the name of this company because of the shame the CEO and head of HR brought on the company. First of all, I would never cheat on my wife. Let's start there.
Right. Yeah. Square one.
Square one. And if you are cheating on your partner, you would think, what I don't want to do is go get, balcony seats at a Coldplay concert. Right? Yeah. And then the third thing is you see couples being highlit on the kiss cam. And you would think that now you would realize that there's a real risk, unless they happen to be the first couple on the kiss cam, which seems unlikely. And then the fourth piece, if you are on the kiss cam, act cool. Act cool.
Act cool. Yeah. Like nothing ever happened, and this is not advice.
But circle back to the first one. Don't cheat on your spouse. How about that for a rule?
It all starts very simply from there, but I'm like compiling a mental list, it's like no ball games because they've got the kiss cam and the like Jumbotron. Coldplay, I guess, is off limits. Maybe concerts in general. I was saddened about finding out that the statement that he released was satire because there was one, it was like something about respecting private moments. And I just wanted to be like, well, dude, you're at a public event. The expectation of privacy is not there, But that one swelled. It took that is just a meme everywhere. And then seeing I think there were some mascots at a baseball game that did the whole pretend and were cradling each other, and then the Jumbotron jumped to them and they reenacted the whole thing, and it's just really funny to see.
It's probably on Saturday Night Live next week, fake version of this. But it's sort of funny. I like this meme of the week. It's totally not related to anything really real estate other than work.
Can we bring it there?
Well, work with people that have integrity. Work with people that are not going to
cheat on their wives.
Cheat on their husbands and wife and sleep their way up the company ladder and whatever they're doing. It's shady, right? So don't
Yeah.
work with people that are shady. But I don't know. This is kind of it's gross, and the amount of internet attention on this is hilarious and gross, and like indicative of where our society. Like, there's so many layers to this onion that we could just talk about for the whole podcast, but we're not, because we're we're over an hour and a half in. We're gonna stop talking about the meme of the week, but we may talk about memes of the week in the future just because they're fun and they break up the podcast a little bit. Let's.
I'm thinking we call it like the water cooler chat or something like that.
Sure, we can call it the water cooler. The water cooler would be a fun segment of the pod. Next item is speeding cameras on the diagonal. Hamish, you put this on here. Tell me about it.
Yeah, this is... I was going to present this as like, what a bummer and all these things. And then I was like reading Facebook comments, and construction worker deaths are up from speeding and all these things. So I'm going to be somewhat serious about this. Along Colorado 119, the diagonal between Boulder and Longmont, there are now speeding cameras, and these aren't the ones that'll nab you when you go by speeding. They're the ones that will log your plate at a certain point, and then you'll log your plate at a second point and do the math to determine whether or not you're speeding. These ones are a little bit trickier to get away from, and I was first introduced to them when we went to New Zealand earlier this year, Osman, and as someone who likes to zoom, not in construction zones and to the full extent of the law, just more of a public service announcement.
Wow. We've had so I've heard of a lot of reckless, crazy driving on the diagonal, and I've seen it firsthand. And every winter there are crazy accidents on the diagonal, and certainly traffic deaths are way up because people are so distracted. Speed cameras suck for those that are heavy-footed, and my understanding is speeding and accidents are actually not particularly well correlated. In fact, I would even argue that forcing people to drive slower and more sedately is going to actually increase distracted driving, because now they're like, well, I'm only going 60, so I can look at my phone, versus I'm going 85. I've got to pay a lot of attention to everything I do. I'm not happy to see speed cameras, but at the same time, I'm very happy to see people that are really egregiously driving badly get nabbed. And I wish there was some sort of distracted camera, ticketer.
Oh, that'd be cool.
If they see you on your phone, then you get a ticket in the mail. Because I can't tell you the number of times, usually on a motorcycle, I look over and I'm on the highway, and these people are going 75 miles an hour with one hand on their phone, staring at their phone, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, you are scaring the hell out of me. I'm right next to you. I'd rather see something for that. But, public service announcement, don't get nabbed on the diagonal.
Oh,
have you seen them? The cameras?
No, I haven't yet.
I have.
Have you?
So they're black. They have a stalk poking up through the air. They're very visible and obvious. So, and there are two of them that appear to be very close to the Boulder side. Like, once you're past them, there's nothing after that. So I know that you said they're based on distance and they're plate readers, not radar. Fine. Yeah. I'm not sure how they're working, but they're closer to Boulder than they are Longmont. And after you pass them, I have not seen more of them.
Yeah, it looks like, that kind of exit you take to get towards, call it like gun barrel area. That looks like where the other one's at. Yeah.
63rd Street. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Apparently there's a warning period, so you'll get like a few, hey, you done goofed in the mail, and then they're going to crack down and get you with tickets. So I don't know how long the warning period is. If this concerns you and is part of your commute, you should look it up. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about City Council changing the rules on comments.
Yeah. Is that also me?
It is. James, you chose this one.
It is. So we chatted about this. I don't know if it made it to a pod or not, but there was some discussion about the protests and disruption in City Council kind of reaching a breaking point. And I almost want to say this is reported by Axios, and now I know why you were talking about Axios the other day, Osman. It's Mitchell Byers is reporting on it. So I don't know the backstory on Mitchell Byers, but I've been following him since he's been followed on the X account for House Einstein. And so every time I see him, I'm like, oh, now I'm building like an association. Anyhow, those protests ended up sparking change within city council. And similar to the CU South lawsuit, where it's chilling that the city would ask for legal fees when the citizens try to, raise concern or, come against the government. I was worried that the city council would crack down pretty hard on public forum altogether with city council. From what it sounds like, they'll be starting a half hour early. Yeah, they'll be starting meetings half an hour earlier at 5:30 p.m. with regular agenda items beginning at 6:30. So you can skip the public comment section, but what it does is it moves public comment to the front and then also gives city council a chance to respond before they jump into agenda items. So seeing the way they're reworking this, I'm fairly optimistic. I think it's an intelligent way to do it versus responding to public comment in a kind of roundabout fashion. You get it out and done with at the start, and then you have your response, and then you move on with the meeting. To me, that sounds like it's going to be pretty solid. There was some involvement with the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, where Aurora banned public comment after a dispute between lawmakers and activists, and then later reversed course. This is Boulder trying to maintain right, trying to appease all, and I think it's a fairly decent implementation. Time will tell, but trying to not shut down public comment, but contain it more and stay on topic with city council matters. Gave it a little skim. What do you think?
Okay, well, look, anybody that's paid attention to city politics knows that the public comment period has become more and more disruptive as time has gone on. And I would argue even before the October 7th incident, the October 7th terrorist attack, the escalation, there's like, we're not even, what are you allowed to call it anymore because of politics? What happened on October 7th, okay, in Israel, between Hamas and Israel, and now the Gaza conflict? People have huge emotions around this and intense opinions, and rightfully so, but these opinions don't belong in city government, and city government has no ability to influence these things, and it's been completely disruptive to city business. And frankly, after the firebomb attack on Pearl Street, it is also a safety issue at this point. And so they're doing what they can do, I think, within the limits of the law for how they can limit public interaction. And so comments are only audio. Council can respond immediately afterward rather than wait to the end of the meeting. And they bumped the meeting even earlier. And the meetings were already early, which limited the ability of people to attend, particularly people with this thing called a job and a family. Like, how are they going to get there? And so
well, they kept
now
it, I thought.
No, the changes include public comment is limited to 45 minutes and start meeting half an hour earlier at 5:30. So
regular agenda items at
begins at 6:30. So attendees can skip the public comment. So if you want to attend and see what's going on, or you have business to do, it starts at 6:30, and the circus starts at 5:30. And I hate to call it the circus, okay, but
I mean, this political matter aside, have you seen some of these videos of like ancient people going up to the podium and complaining about messages they're getting on Facebook to city council? Like, public comment is a circus.
It is a circus, right? 100% it's a circus. And people are right to feel very strongly about what's happening in the Middle East. It's not my place or your place or this podcast place to have opinions about that, any more than it's city council's business to be making proclamations about it and listening to the public vent about it on either side or any side of this issue. It's just disruptive to anything we can do as a city. And frankly, the city council are already distracted enough with things that are not ordinary course of business. Like, they really need to focus on our city streets, homelessness, our pothole, like basic services. Like, how about we focus on running our city? Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm in radical favor. If you really want your opinion known to city council, send them an email and communicate directly with council people, but stop with the showboating just to disrupt council. It's absurd.
I think the way they implemented this, so middle ground way to do it. right? Like not banning public comment all outright, and just, I mean, yeah. So I think it's a follow-up. I thought it made it into a podcast a while ago, after the firebombing, Molotov attack, hate crime. After that, we talked about it, I think, briefly. Yeah, Boulder Strong, that podcast. So just a follow-up on that one.
At least you still have the ability to have a public comment, and they could have taken it away entirely. And well,
that gets into like First Amendment, and then you know,
could send an email.
So, yeah,
you can write a letter.
Right. I know.
You can
and that's
record
what I'm
a video
saying.
and post it on YouTube.
Go hardcore, right? They tried to keep a middle ground. So props to them.
I guess. Yeah. If I were on council, I would have just wanted to remove public comment entirely. Like,
I'm sure they did, honestly. I'm sure they were like, God, why do we let them in?
I would not have blamed them. I would have been like, you know, we'll take the ACLU lawsuit over you clowns all day long that are just here to disrupt our council business. So, all right. Boy, do I sound cranky.
I was going to say, who gets to decide what's disrupting council business and what's regular public comment? And then you get into that argument and this and that. So I like the way they did it, right? Versus unilaterally decreeing what's acceptable and what's not. Gets sticky at that point.
I don't always agree with council, but I do think that they are deeply challenged in how they can manage and balance their roles to serve our city and respond to our citizens' concerns with behavior by residents. Yeah, well, and behavior of some people that are really there to get some sort of virtue signal points. Like, if you know, okay, let me just...
I mean, we talked about this, right? Like,
let's go there. If you know that your protesting is going to have zero impact on the actual situation on the ground, and you're there with your signs on whatever you're protesting on, your signs, your flags, your bullhorn, and your Instagram camera ready, right, to show you protesting, your mission is not to actually impact change. Your mission is to get social points. Somehow virtue signal how much you care about this issue and show you doing something about the issue. And
so, you know, there's the argument that protest starts small and action begins as a small snowball and begins to grow. And while there is an international separation, making voices, especially in prevalent cities, heard and fighting for change and seeking for these things is American as apple pie, right?
You sound so sensible, and I can't argue against that, Hamish. I agree with you completely.
But I totally get the argument about virtue signaling, and I think a lot of it is. But I can see how I can see both sides, man. Like, totally. And it's college town, and like there is a lot of that, and I know, man, I could get myself canceled right here, but
it's not a lot of... Look, I've been to those council meetings. It's not a lot of college students that go to council meetings.
Not usually, right? And then
and I could tell you, so for a long time, my evening on Tuesdays when council meetings were held, my evening activity with Leah was to pour ourselves a cocktail and watch council. And then she would watch me laugh and shout about what was going on and tweet, live stream tweet with the reporter that was covering it at the time named Shay. And I would tweet at Shay, and sometimes Shay would tweet back at me, and I would comment about what I was watching because it was so fun and so ridiculous. But the number of people watching on the YouTube live stream was usually like 5 people. It was like... me and 4 other cranks were there actively engaged in what's going on in politics. So I think that this public comment is broken.
My roommate, me and Ben, we watched Ben and I watched the Westminster City Council live stream on Mondays. And it's like the most soporific thing in the world, but we're just like, now we're citizens, you know? Leah
would roll her eyes and put up with me for wanting to watch city council meetings in our evenings together. I'm like, yeah. All right, let's hit our last news article, and that is on the CU South flood project, and that was what we opened with because a district court judge has granted the residents who are challenging they want more time, right? Because the city is requesting attorney's fees after these residents lost, and the residents are fighting that and asking for more time to make their case why they should not have to pay attorney's fees in this ongoing litigation. And so it's back and forth, and the judge gave them until August 19th to file their response. And the most interesting part about this piece, again, written by staff, not by an individual author, is that it says, ironically, the city's motion for fees appeared intended in part to discourage the residents from extending the case or appealing it further. And instead, they got another 4-week extension. So the city had hoped to begin construction earlier this year. However, it still required several permits as of earlier this month. And the lawsuit was filed by Save South Boulder. They argued that using the city's stormwater fees required voter approval under TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And it challenged council's approval of an ordinance which authorized $66 million of bonds to fund the project. So there you have it. We're delayed another 4 weeks. And where the rubber meets the road is that this is a decades-long project, and it will have a pretty big impact on homes that and other types of structures that are along South Boulder Creek. And we've reached out to the engineers involved to try to get some mapping, and they sent some stuff to us to get a sense of what's going to happen after it's approved. And of course, all they can really say is it's not going to get worse. We cannot do anything that's going to make flooding worse. It can only get better. But the maps seem to indicate there's some properties that are going to get more benefit than others. And if you're thinking about buying along the floodplain, you may want to take a look at that map and get a sense of what lies in the future. And for our clients who contacted us who own along that floodplain, they're also wondering if they can possibly get a better perch to negotiate permits to do some home improvements. And that's what we were trying to help them solve, even though it doesn't pay us anything in a commission. We really would like to help answer that question, because it might be worthwhile waiting until the floodplain is adapted, but that could be 2 years down the road. And that's if they started now, not delayed another 4 weeks. So that's the latest news. And then we can have our quick carve-out, Hamish, because we've got other things happening
we're
today.
Hitting 2 hours pretty solid these days. All right. You want to bring it home? Bring it home.
Okay, I'm going to bring it home and also circle back to our topic about going electric.
Okay.
And I have some lessons from the recent heat pump installation. So up here at our house, we did a 5-head system and Mitsubishi head units and a Mitsubishi condenser outside the actual heat pump. And we initially were going to go with a very large contractor that was very well known, private equity backed, and very slick in their presentation, but also in a way very impersonal. And the runner up to the project, who also bid on it, is a young person who has started a company doing these installations. And this was his 38th, I believe, installation, or 39th installation. So
I think I overheard on a meeting in the background, but I forgot.
And he spent the better part of a week with his team installing the system, and then another 2 days troubleshooting it to make sure it was dialed in. And the attention to detail was really high. Their ability to take our concerns into consideration, in particular with placement of the lines. They use line hide to hide the cooling lines around the outside of the house. Their willingness to go into the crawl space and possibly into the attic to reduce the number of lines around the house. They did end up going through the crawl space.
Nice.
So there's not a ton of lines around the outside of the house. The only surprise was the size of the exterior condenser itself. I did not realize how large that thing was going to be.
So it's
but
just
placed
one?
It's
Just
two
one
on
for all
top of
heads?
each other.
Okay.
It's two on top of each other. There's a manifold in the crawl space, and it turns out there's a lot more to it than I thought, and yet it's also a pretty simple system. So we'll see. I think the lessons from choosing a contractor is ask lots of questions, and in particular, express your desire to where you want to put the lines. And it's not just about the price. It's about
Totally.
who's gonna care. The owner of the business is the one doing it themselves, and they really care, and they came referred from another of their clients. they're likely going to take really good care of you. And I feel like that's what this contractor did. He took great care. And he even was willing, when it didn't go quite right on Friday night and we knew that it wasn't working, he offered to drive up, and we told him, don't bother. We can wait till Monday.
Nice.
Like, you do not need to like drop your whole weekend, come all the way back up here to figure out what's wrong with the system. Come back on Monday. It's not a big deal. And this is what I told him. I said, mistakes happen on the job. It's a construction project. Things get screwed up. The question is, do you hide it or do you own it? Do you get defensive when your client's unhappy, or do you try to help solve the problem? And each step along the line, he tried to solve the problem. And I think that this individual is going to be a great and very successful business owner in the future. And if you would like that direct referral and you're a client, pick up the phone, and I'm happy to tell you about this contractor. I don't think they have the ability to scale so massively that I should mention them on the pod.
Yeah, fair.
Not that the pod we don't get hundreds of thousands of views, but collectively between all of our different platforms, we're getting a lot of listens, and more than enough to justify keeping on podcasting. I don't want to blow him out with referrals, but I'm happy to give you a referral if you're an existing client. I think he did a great job and deserves at least an opportunity to bid on your project.
Totally. And also really cool to hear. Yeah. I have a Mr. Cool unit. You ever even heard of the brand?
You did it yourself. I mean,
I
that's
know,
great.
but Mitsubishi, I mean, like, they do everything. They're great. Like, Mr. Cool. Timu. No, they're decent from what I could find. But shoot, mine's getting a little outdated now, but I'm good to jump in?
Yeah, jump in, Hamish.
Okay. Chimney Hollow is a reservoir. It is the largest dam built in the U.S. in the last 20 years, and it is a dam that is not stopping an existing flow of water, but rather filling a valley. It's just west of Carter Lake, and it is, to use a technical term, huge. It's part of a larger water conservation and redistribution project from Colorado. Northern Water's mostly involved, but they take water from, let me think. I had the reservoir name in the back of my head for so long, and now it's gone. But they take water from the western slope and they're pumping it into these various reservoirs, and it's kind of a two-pronged thing. One, it helps secure water for a current and projected demand, but it also is kind of a long-term play from Colorado. I've heard a lot about the scarcity of fresh water in the coming years and how difficult it will be to have a kind of guaranteed access to fresh potable water. Colorado doing this massive infrastructure project is really nice to see. It shows that while they might not be kind of trumpeting it, there is some long-term planning and larger infrastructure going on for this. So some other fun facts about it. It started filling this month. The current existing reservoirs are still at a high capacity, so rather than a couple of years to fill, they're thinking that it'll be full halfway through next year. I went over a weekend or two ago and took some videos of the dam. It's huge. I didn't want to get too close with the drone. We have a zoom lens on it. Even then, it didn't capture the true scale. I mean, we're talking these massive excavators on top of the dam that look like tiny little specks. It's huge. But yeah, just cool. I like seeing infrastructure and things like that.
Well, glancing at the news articles that pop up when I search for Chimney Hollow, it's things like tallest dam in the last 2 decades that's been built, $570 million project. There's something about uranium possibly being monitored.
Colorado has really high naturally occurring uranium. That's part of the reason why we've got high radon everywhere. So, I mean, what are you going to do?
It's a huge project and benefits 12 different communities. I guess, where is it on a map, Hamish? Did you say that already?
It's like, so I thought it was looking, I thought the dam was facing, call it like east-west, but it's facing north-south. And if you find Carter Lake next to Loveland, it's I mean, I don't even know if it's more than a mile to the west of it.
It's northwest of it, not by that far. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just, it's funny. I was just riding a motorcycle up in this area the other day.
Yeah.
So it's between Carter Reservoir and it's not, it's Masonville is to the north. So it's south of Masonville.
Yep.
It's basically just northwest of Carter Lake.
And it's huge. If you guys want to see some videos on it, we'll drip feed some content out, but Aaron Witt is a YouTuber that covers very large construction projects around the world. He came to Colorado and did a little video talking about the scope of it. I think I may have said this, but to keep like construction traffic and everything down, they quarried on site. And while they were quarrying, it was the largest quarry in Colorado, just for this one dam.
That's crazy.
They had a Scandinavian company come in to build the core, and they had like one of two machines in the world come in to build the core for the dam. Like insane.
That's crazy.
Infrastructure and scale, yeah.
I mean, water is critical, and
It's
protecting
life.
our water, building water resources, protecting water resources are important. Although at the same time, I feel for a little bit of Edward Abbey in me, and we should be blowing up these dams. I'm not happy about them, but what are you going to do? It's interesting from an engineering perspective.
I know, right?
Emotional, social perspective. I can't say I like it, but at the same time, I think it's good. I don't know. Maybe it's good. I have mixed feelings about big dams.
I was telling my aunt about it, and she was really upset, and I was like, I know, I get it.
Well,
but
I mean, aren't they really
construction-
bad? Aren't they really bad for the environment? Like, is there any history of a good dam that benefited the environment? They're always like horrible, sad stories of beautiful ecosystems that were completely inundated and destroyed for a dam.
So I'm not going to advocate that this is good, but the key that it's not stopping an existing flow of water means that any ecosystem that thrives off of, right, like a creek or a river or anything, isn't going to get shattered. Whatever is in the valley is going to get wrecked. To use the technical term again.
Got it. Okay, I
Yeah.
get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, it is like, and they talk about uranium, you're getting a bunch of dust up, and I mean, there's so much to it. But again, the world's hurtling forwards, long-term planning and things like this kind of have to happen. Now I sound terrible. So.
Okay. What are you saying? I sounded terrible before? All right.
No, I know the implication.
let's wrap up the pod, Avish. I think it's time to do the roll call.
Alrighty. Is it me?
Sure.
All right. Hello, listeners of the House Einstein podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here today, and we sure enjoyed it, and we hope you did as well. We have social media elsewhere from where you're listening to this. We have an Instagram, a Facebook, a website. First and foremost, we are real estate agents that deeply care about our clients making smart real estate decisions. If you're looking in the Colorado market, we'd love to help you find a referral. And if you're in our footprint, we'd love to serve you personally. So reach out to us, houseeinstein.com. And we can't wait to talk to you next time. Osmond, am I missing anything?
Nope. Sounds great.
Fantastic.
That sounds
Take care.
perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And we will catch you next time.